Hi guys, I'm Chris.
And Mike.
And welcome back to this week's No Limits, a Mitrap podcast. How you doing this week, Mike?
I'm good. I took my copy of Enemy at the Gates down to Myrtle Beach.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, down in Myrtle Beach. Got to read at the beach, read at the pool. It's been awesome.
Are you done?
I'm about 3/4 of the way through. It's freaking killer. It is. I think I'm going to say it. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. I'm not even done yet. I think it's Kyle's best.
Really?
I think it's Kyle's best. It's
better than Lethal Agent.
Yeah, it's up there with Lethal Agent. Maybe I'm speaking too soon, but it's that good. Really is. That's all we're gonna say.
Right.
Not gonna say.
That's all
much
we're gonna
more.
say. We don't want to spoil much.
Yeah, that good. And I was not a bandwagon type person who said that with total power. I was more.
I know you were super cagey with your response, and I kind of knew something was up because I didn't read it until after you. I gotta get on that, especially because I can't listen to it. So
right. It's that good.
All right, cool.
All right, how about you? What's going on?
Nothing. Just kids are sick right now, so that's a bummer. But it was about time. Yeah, just getting back into work after weeks of vacation and then
you were at the beach, right?
I was at the beach, and then my boss was on vacation, so it was kind of like a vacation for me. So yeah, it works out.
When the boss is away, Chris goes out to play some 18 holes.
Chris comes home to early to fix his house, and then plays 18 holes. Actually, so last weekend, I'll tell you this real quick. I went. We have this yearly golf trip with Caroline's family up in. I think it's Fayetteville, Pennsylvania. I don't know. And we played 3 rounds plus an extra 18, but it was like a best ball thing. So, I mean, I ended up taking the same amount of swings, but so 4 rounds of golf plus like you got unlimited golf range
balls.
So yep. I got there like 2 hours early on Friday and probably swung like
dude,
100, 200 balls.
You can't go too hard at the range before a round.
I was jacked up too, and then I was playing with Caroline's uncle, who's really good, Caroline's cousin, who's really good, and his father-in-law, who's also really good. So I was like nervous. I wanted to play well, show him that I've gotten better. But at the end of it, they're like, "Chris, wow, you are," because last time I played with them, I think I was scoring 120s, and that was generous. I was they were giving me all the oh that's good type things.
Now you've come a long way since I even first played with you. Just a couple, 2 years ago. Long way.
So,
dude, I rocked the golf course today. Tied my personal best, 84.
Very good.
I think I had 9 pars and no double bogeys. It was just wild. Never had a round. Well, I had a round like that once before, so. That's awesome. Very rare. But yeah.
That's our update of Mitrap Pod from the course.
Yeah, the new golf series. Remember
series.
That fan who tweeted us about our golf, Papa the Bobo? Wonder if he's still around.
He's like, Chris, you need to spend a little more time at home, a little less time on the course.
He's like, 4 episodes in a row, these guys haven't brought up golf. I'm unsubscribing. Screw this.
That's funny. All right, you can go subscribe to our other podcast. Chris and Mike talk about shitty golf.
Talk about and play shitty golf.
Yes,
it's called Losing Our Balls.
Oh, you can cut this, whatever. But I felt so great because I played the entire round with the 2 balls that I put in my pocket.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So you played with 4 balls.
Yeah, exactly. I walked myself into that.
Dude,
one.
That's good. I only lost 2 today, so I played with 3, lost 2. That's pretty good, man.
You're getting better when that happens.
Right, when you're not buying a $40 box of balls and going through it every round.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. I don't buy new balls. I get eBay used balls.
Oh yeah, I go to Walmart, get that bag at like 96, half of a range, but
right. Because I'm gonna lose them all anyway.
Anyways, I guess we should get back to Rapp.
You know what? Before we get into today's topic, which I am pumped for, but before we get there, we have a copy of Enemy at the Gates to give away. If you remember, we mentioned that we are doing a Reddit giveaway. All you had to do was go visit reddit.com, search for Mitch Rapp, and participate in the discussion board. And we put your name in the hat to win a copy of Enemy at the Gates. So if you're not an ambassador, if you don't yet have an advanced reading copy, here was your chance. I got the names ready to go. Let's spin that wheel. I wish I could play the audio of the wheel spinning. Here we go.
You got to find it somewhere on like some podcast audio thing. It's got to be somewhere.
Scott Coleman, big fan. That's the username. I think I know who that is. Who else would have a username? Scott Coleman, big fan.
Oh, I know who that is.
It's got to be Steph K.
It's got to be. It's got to be Steph K.
All right, Steph, if you are not an ambassador, congratulations to you, because now we will be sending you an advanced reading copy of Enemy at the Gates.
Congrats.
And we will get that out to you. As always, we also want to thank our patrons. And speaking of Enemy at the Gates, super excited to announce a patron hangout, a Zoom call, where we'll be chatting all things Rapp. And if everybody on the call has already read Enemy at the Gates, we'll get to chat about it. I know I'm dying, Chris. And once you read it, you'll be dying to chat about it.
Ooh, that sounds good.
So we want to bring the patrons together, give them a platform to meet us, to talk about the show, to get some feedback, just to hang out, frankly. And this will be a special one because we'll get to talk about Enemy. And that will be sometime in mid to late August. So if you've been on the fence and want to help support this podcast, sign on up at patreon.com/MitchRappPod, and you will get the invite to our next patron hangout. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll be chatting all about Enemy at the Gates.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right, Chris, what are we covering today?
All right, today. So, we were racking our brains what to do with some of these bonus pods in between books. And, we thought about, let's do a character study. We can't really do Mitch yet. We haven't done the whole series in Irene, but we have seen the last of one character recently in Killshot, and that was Thomas Stansfield. And, we thought it would be a great time to pay tribute to Thomas, his time with us in the books. But yeah, we just thought we'd, discuss him, discuss his life, his interactions with the other characters, and sort of break down, what we liked about him. And at the end, we're going to pick our favorite quotes of him, or moments and quotes from Thomas from the novels. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped to talk about this with you, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, he's a beloved character across the board. Oftentimes not mentioned initially, overshadowed by Mitch, Stan Hurley, Irene Kennedy, Scott Coleman, but come on, he played such a major role in a large portion of this series and in shaping Rapp, maybe in some ways more than Hurley shaped Rapp, or in more positive ways. So yeah, I'm ready to talk about him. But I have to say, every time we do a character analysis episode moving forward, all my thoughts can best be summed up in the form of a limerick.
Of a limerick.
Yes, indeed. I actually have a double limerick for Thomas today.
When this is all said and done, we're going to have to do like a special cut episode of all your limericks.
That's going to be a pain in the ass to edit.
You saved them all. I guess you could just reread them. But I think it'd be cooler if you like cut the audio from all of them. That'd be sick.
Can I just recite them all back to back?
No, you already said them, so just cut them out. There you go. I'm giving you more work.
That's even more work than just re-recording. Anyway. All right, here we go. An ode to Thomas. There once was a man named Thomas. Behind the Iron Curtain, he showed promise. The Nazis he defeated. The Soviets he unseated. In the face of pressure, pure calmness. The man, the myth, the legend. To the history books he is destined. Mentor to Irene, awareness so keen. On Rapp he left quite the impression.
Very nice.
He deserves it. Stansfield deserves a nice ode.
Very nice. Actually, better idea I thought during that. We'll just turn it into a book, like a little fanfic book.
There we go.
You know,
a little print up.
Yeah, a little print up.
A poetry anthology.
Yeah, of all your limericks on the book.
No Limits, a limerick anthology. I like that. That could be a gift to our patrons at the end of this whole thing.
For sticking with us, for schleving it out.
You get a measly poetry book written by a middle school social studies teacher. Congratulations.
With a sticker.
Oh,
That's funny.
I think the people have enough stickers. You know what? We might need new bookmarks, though. Ones that show enemy at the gates. The reading list bookmarks. All right, we'll have to get on some swag. All right, another thing, though, I want to throw at you, Chris, is a quiz show. Cue the music. Ding, 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 ding. We'll put some music in. Quiz show. I've got some questions.
Come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Mitch.
All right, so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but this quiz show can be for our listeners. I've got some trivia questions about Thomas Stansfield. Chris, we'll see if you can field a few of them, if you feel confident or not.
Okay.
All right, first one. How many Mitch Rapp books did Stansfield appear in?
All right, well, I'll just name them. So, Mitch Rapp books?
Oh, yeah, trick question. Vince Flynn books. Vince Flynn books.
Okay. So, Term Limits was the first time we saw him. We see him in Transfer of Power. We see him in The Third Option. He's not in Separation of Power, but his funeral is. So you're going to count that?
We'll count that.
And then, so it's 4, and then he's in the 2 prequel ones. So 6.
6 books. That is correct.
Okay.
In which state was Thomas born, went to college, and was buried?
I want to say South Dakota.
And you, sir, are correct.
Oh.
University of South Dakota.
Nice. I knew it was a Dakota, and I was just guessing he was from the South. So
what's their University of South Dakota? Do you know their mascot?
I feel like I should because Carson Wentz went there.
Oh, did he really? Let's see. Who are
Maybe
they?
he went to North Dakota. Maybe the Jackalopes?
Mascot. It looks like a bear's paw. Nope, that's a coyote. The Coyotes.
Ah, the Coyotes. Okay.
All right. Quiz show, round 3. You're doing pretty well so far. You're 2 for 2. Our audience listening along, I'm sure, is also 2 for 2. They're a smart bunch. However, I'm amping up the challenge here for you, Chris.
Okay.
How many children does Thomas have? And of what gender?
Does he have... does he come from a big family or a small family? I'm going to say 3 children. 2 girls and a boy.
The 2 girls is correct. I don't know about the boy. I don't know if he ever mentions a son.
I knew it was 2 girls.
Bonus question or follow-up question. Where do they live?
They got to live near him in Virginia, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. West Coast. California, Sacramento, and San Diego.
Damn. I just felt like he mentioned that, like, I'm just envisioning the line from when he mentions that he would hang out with his kids, but maybe that was just on vacation or something. So.
Yep. No, there is a big thing in, it's early on when we meet him, talking about how he prioritized time with his kids.
Family. Yeah, I know, Sunday was like his day.
Right.
That's mentioned a couple times where, like, he really tried not to go to work on Sunday, and he went to church and with his family. So.
Yep. I think they moved to California after getting married.
Gotcha. So just 2 daughters. Okay.
2 daughters. How many grandchildren?
6.
3 grandchildren.
I'm
Three.
bad.
You're overestimating there. Well, these are tiny
Yeah.
little details. I wonder how our audience is doing. All right, last question for you. And this is a bit of a tough one. Thomas is fluent in 4 languages. What are they?
English, Russian,
Mm-hmm.
French, and German.
French is not mentioned. English, Russian, German, and
Arabic?
Norwegian.
Norwegian.
Norwegian. He
Okay.
parachuted in World War II into Norway with the Allies.
Interesting. Wow. So, but he was stationed in Beirut, right? So,
For a long time.
I mean,
Mhm.
I guess you can be stationed there and not know the language.
That was also when he was older, so
Yeah,
probably
he might
wasn't
not have,
part of his training. Yeah,
Right.
to learn Arabic. Also, it's kind of weird because the English, Russian, and German is mentioned as early as, I believe, term limits. Think we learned that about him early. The Norwegian is not mentioned until separation of power, when we get the backstory at his funeral.
the prelude. Yeah, in the prelude, right?
Right.
All right, I think I got like 50, 60% of them right. Yeah,
I think you did rather well on the quiz show. But let's keep it going. We want to get to Thomas's background. Let's do it. What is the earliest we know about his life?
Yeah, so I remember like just, you had pulled up some quotes and some lines from different novels thanks to your Kindle, and just from my recollections of him, but it's always mentioned that he started out in the Wild Bill Donovan days. I love how Vince always like tacks that line in. And I think Brad Thor also like always does that when he talks about like the precursor to the CIA. And he was in the war, and his first job was to be what I think in what would ultimately become the OSS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he was tasked to go behind enemy lines, find allies, and I guess sort of, bring them to his side and just be pure chaos behind enemy lines, like cut supply lines, take out infrastructure, train lines, power, whatever. Like that was his job, was just to, sort of be this disruption behind the lines. They're like, what the hell's going on, type
Right.
thing.
Yeah, they were called the Jedburgh teams,
Right,
which
the
led me
Jedburgh
to look
teams.
into it. They were a real group of soldiers who parachuted behind the lines, and we even get this little detail that he was part of the team on D-Day, that before the invasion, he had parachuted in and he destroyed a railway line, a main communications station. He actually cut the lines and was doing that to prep for D-Day. So Thomas Stansfield basically was the reason the invasion of D-Day could work, is that he disrupted the system behind the scenes even before we had boots on the ground, which is just pretty cool.
That's really cool. In my mind, I would just love a description of that,
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be Stansfield, but just like a book about like this. There has to be a book on these Jedburgh
Right.
people. I would love to read something like that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was also called the Jedburgh teams, but before parachuting into France, he did the same in Norway, hence the Norwegian, which makes sense later on when we find out he also speaks that. And that was as young as his early 20s. And Vince even mentions this fact that Eisenhower would go on to say the invasion of D-Day would not have been possible without these Jedburgh teams. They would organize the resistance. So he was not only disrupting, he was also showing his leadership capacities in his early 20s, bringing together these various bands of French, resistance fighters, and basically corralled them and marshaled the troops. So it's just pretty, like, that's major stuff.
Right. I guess I misspoke earlier saying the Iron Curtain, but he does eventually do that, where
Right.
he'll go once after World War II and we get into, this whole the Cold War with Russia. That's his like next step, I guess. I sort of combine those two things together. But this is just essentially what the CIA does right now, right? They have to find assets, flip them, bring them to our side, and exploit the knowledge. And this is just perfectly. You could see why he would go on to be so successful with the clandestine operations, because he started out doing this very stuff.
That and their other role we saw with like the Northern Alliance. We needed to bring together various bands of militias, if you will, unite them and give them a common purpose to fend off an enemy. And, we did that, right, in the Middle East. Well, we've been doing that for 30 years in the Middle East. So,
right.
Similar to what Thomas was doing back in the 40s. Yeah, you're right about the Iron Curtain. And I was trying to look for what's the earliest posting or place that he was. And there was a quote in American Assassin. So this is Vince later on fleshing out more about Hurley and Stansfield's time together. And we learn they were in Budapest in the summer of 56. So, right when Cold War is heating up, the whole space race, the militarization, proliferation of nuclear weapons and, ICBMs. And he was in his 30s now, where he met Hurley, who was in his early 20s still. So Hurley definitely younger than Thomas. And so we get this banter back and forth between Hurley and Stansfield. And this is where Stansfield says, I would go into a city. I would try to work assets to do our traditional thing, but I needed Hurley because he was my guy who would get to town and get to know the prostitutes and the barkeeps and the black marketers. Right. And Hurley would feed him that information while Stansfield is doing more of the highbrow stuff, playing different roles. I would love a novella on that. Budapest in 56.
That reminds me of like, I guess it finally got fleshed out in Black Widow, but that was like a common thing in the Marvel things was Black Widow and Hawkeye. They would always reference Budapest. And every time like they did that, I would think back to that line in American Assassin, because we were reading it and I was watching these things about back in Budapest. It's funny how like these different stories always talk about it.
Right, yeah, it becomes kind of a common trope. But I love seeing it played out with these two characters here. I just want more of that. We've said many times on the pod we want more of this time period. And there's so many nuggets. So you had Budapest, and then there's a couple other times they're mentioned together. There's this one. And it doesn't mention where or when. But this was in, again, American Assassin. It's kind of when Hurley is bickering with Kennedy and Stansfield is kind of sick of them going back and forth. He kind of wants to play the enforcer. And Stansfield gives Hurley an icy stare. And Hurley is taken aback and says, oh shit, he's only given me that stare once before. And the quote is, nearly 3 decades ago, Hurley still remembered that his stupidity had almost cost him his life, and if it hadn't been for Stansfield's magnanimous attitude, he would have died that day.
Shit.
So Stansfield saved Hurley's life, and he gives him this like death stare, which gets him to say, calm down, grow up, mature, don't go, off the deep end. And I want to know what happened. How did Stansfield save Hurley's life back in these days behind the Iron Curtain?
Yeah, I want to touch on their relationship, I guess, in a little bit. But so after this, he eventually becomes the station chief in Moscow, right?
Yep.
So I'm guessing, obviously, after the Iron Curtain falls, when we have an actual some diplomacy or diplomatic wing there.
Officially, yeah.
Officially. And then from there, he rises the ranks of the CIA to become the deputy director in charge of clandestine operations, which is where we see him when we first meet him in Term Limits.
Yep.
Where we see him in American Assassin and in Kill Shot. And then when we see him, when we second saw him, he now is the director of the CIA in Transfer of Power, right?
Yeah. But we get in Term Limits, while he's deputy director of clandestine operations, he does something super important in that he brings in Scott Coleman.
He does.
Because Scott Coleman was the blonde-haired assassin, and Stansfield is smart enough to say, this guy's actually a patriot. He actually wants the country on the right track. If I forgive him what he's done, or at least I give him a pathway forward, instead of him just becoming even more of a crazy assassin and loose cannon who ends up, getting shot, killing himself, becoming so crazed, Stansfield wants to bring him into the fold. And like everything Coleman builds, his relationship with Rapp, his company, he's still to this day in total power and Lethal Agent getting big contracts with the SEAL Demolition Company. He's like the #1 worldwide contractor in the security field and everything. That only happened because Stansfield recruited him on this beach in Term Limits.
Right. And we get that scene in Term Limits where it's Stansfield and it's Scott and it's Higgins, right? Or it's one of him or
it might be,
it's not Stu Garrett,
O'Rourke or McMahon. Might be McMahon.
No. The scene where like Stansfield like approves Scott of killing, I think it's with Arthur Higgins.
Arthur Higgins, yes.
They're like out on this island or somewhere on the water.
Yes.
And I just remember that scene and he just, it's very early on that we see that Stansfield doesn't take any second thoughts in terms of allowing Scott to do this.
Yeah, that's when we also learn that exact mission about Stansfield's files.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
You're right. Arthur Higgins unofficially worked for the CIA. For 40 years, it says he had done the agency's dirty work. And when Stansfield took over as deputy director, one of his first things was to order Arthur to cease all of his kind of black ops and things that he was doing off the record, because Stansfield didn't want that under his leadership, because he thought Arthur was too powerful and basically operating in the shadows in ways that could have been dangerous, like almost paramilitary unto himself. And that's going to start this beef with Arthur Higgins. And Stansfield kind of pushes him out, kind of forces him to resign by, and he has an insurance policy, all these files he has about him and what he's done in his back pocket in case Arthur doesn't go quietly. And
it's those same files that he passes on to Irene, which essentially sets her up to become the next director.
Right.
The fact that not only was she groomed, from the very beginning, essentially to be his successor, but he's passed on this vault of information that, I think it's Stevens at the time, right? President Stevens. He essentially can't not choose her because he knows too much. She knows too much. She knows too much, and therefore Thomas knew too much about him and everything. So,
most people hear the phrase "skeletons in the closet," and that causes you to backtrack and think about your own skeletons. Thomas used the skeletons in the closet as a policy to get ahead by saying, I'm going to find out and document all the skeletons in the closet for everyone else around me and above me going up to the commander-in-chief. That way, basically, nobody can backstab me,
Well, he probably had files on people that don't even know who he was at the time, right?
Right.
He's scoping out and finding these people like, oh, this guy's an up-and-comer. I need to have dirt on every single person that I may potentially have a run-in with. Let's just see what's going on, And at the same time, he's in charge of protecting our country, so you need to know. I guess technically they're not supposed to spy on Americans, but
it paid off. And as long as it's somebody like Stansfield with the right morals, right?
Sure.
You have the right virtues.
Person, yeah.
It won't fall into bad hands.
Because you can easily take those files and be a complete opposite person and do some damage with those things.
Which is what he was nervous Arthur Higgins was doing and becoming too powerful. Yeah, so in the hands of someone like a Stansfield, we the reader can, rest assured. And then knowing that he's training and grooming Irene to take over, that's fantastic. But one little small thing while we're on it in Term Limits, that's how they get to the takedown on Arthur Higgins' house, because he pulls up the file of that guy Augie, Remember, like you're saying, they
Right.
fly out with Augie, and Augie says, Stansfield decades ago had me starting all this work for him. So Stansfield had like this random guy collecting intel for him in the agency on other agency directors. He has a network that he built up.
Yeah, and we even get to see it a couple times where we meet, like in Killshot, right? I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he's the one who he tasked to spy on Paul
Cook.
Yeah, but he has him spy on Cook, and he also is the same guy who he has do the polygraph on Victor, right?
Yes, the polygraph guy.
And so, and Vince brings it up that the fact that this guy, trusts Stansfield, he's done, he knows that Stansfield knows that this guy does really good work, and we get these little nuggets of just descriptions about the people who he brings into his inner circle to do this, and he trusts Rob Ridley. Who we met in American Assassin and in Term Limits, who presumably Stansfield is the one who fast tracked him to be the big we then just saw in the books before, what is Pursuit of Honor and Extreme Measures, right?
Right.
So we know the people that he brings into his inner circle. He seems to have a great judge of character, essentially starting the second most important, not the second, but like I don't know, what's Scott's order in importance in this story? Would you say him third? I'd say Mitch is number one.
I think Mitch and Irene
is Irene is like a close second.
I'd say third,
I'd have to go Scott because he's in more books than Hurley.
Yeah, I'd say he's the third most influential character for sure.
Besides all the villains have like a different thing, but
sure, right. You mentioned Stansfield's inner circle, like the polygraph guy we meet who says, he's been doing work for Stansfield for forever. I went back to something in Killshot that I kind of wish I appreciated more in the moment, because when I reread this scene, it was brilliant. It was delightful. In the story, I thought it was just like a side story that I was unhappy with, but it was so enjoyable when he meets up and calls in his contact from the UK, Rolly Smith. And I was like, who is this guy? Why is he meeting with him? But as I reread the scene, so it's one of Stansfield's old buddies, Rolly Smith, who's in MI6, so he's British intelligence. And they also bring in the priest from France, De Fleury, right. And the three of them are going back and forth, and it was a riot. And they were doing it all in front of Irene. And Irene was still green at the time, so she was like, I never saw Stansfield acting like a little kid. And they were all basically joking, and then one of them goes, I think it was the priest. They're joking around like old friends, and the priest goes, you should have seen these two at the end of World War II. Remember that one time I had to save you from the whorehouse when the... And then Stansfield cuts him off and goes, hey, don't start telling lies, or I'll be forced to hand my secret files on you over to the Vatican.
Right, exactly.
I love that side of him. I when I was reading that, but it was just such a delightful chapter in Killshot when I went back to it, to see Stansfield with old buddies joking around.
Well, and speaking of old buddies, we met one of his greatest old buddies in Greta's grandfather.
Yes, Herr Ohlmeyer. Exactly.
Herr Ohlmeyer, yes.
I mean, and I love that.
We don't ever see American the two of them together, but he mentions, obviously, when he meets Rapp, that he's known Thomas for a very long time. He set Thomas and Stan both up with the similar package that he set Rapp up with. And then it's mentioned again in Killshot where, obviously he knows who Greta is. That's how Mitch sort of proves his innocence. And he knows, I have to tell her grandfather what's going on, and type things. But you could tell, again, he has such a great judge of character, and the people that he has in his inner circle are very trustworthy. And he then, I think this is really important because he sees the promise in Mitch.
Right.
I guess we can just talk about it now, how without Thomas, we don't get the Orion team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it started by him and Stan and Irene a little bit, and then all the senators who sort of give it the green light, one of them being a villain in the later novels, Hank Clark, right?
Who he also has files on.
Who he has files on, yes.
Even the senators who were in on the Orion team with him, he still makes sure to have documentation.
He needed them to sanction it because he needed to have some sort of political cover.
Some sort of cover.
Because he knew he couldn't just do this himself, because if he ever did it just himself, then it would come back.
In his files, they say he had enough written, signed testimonies from, I guess, the Gang of Eight or some other high-level people in Congress to say, like, nope, this was not Stansfield working alone. We were in on it. We all authorized it. This was official business of the U.S. government. But that's not going to see the light of day unless shit hits the fan.
Unless something really bad goes on, yeah.
I don't think it ever comes out, right?
No.
Like, does Stansfield ever have to defend the Orion team in public? Or Kennedy?
I guess they
Black
do,
Ops
right?
assassination program?
When Mitch's cover gets blown.
True.
And
by Rudin, Congressman Rudin.
Yeah, he has to, and I guess Hank Clark sets that up, right? Because he sort of says that.
I think though
gives that up.
I think at one time though, it's like an insurance policy. Like I know Rapp's cover gets blown and they have to kind of say, yeah, he's one of our operatives. But I don't think it ever is like so much that Stansfield has to pull out the papers and say like, look, this was an approved operation by the U.S. Congress. Does it ever go that far?
No, it doesn't. I don't think that far. Which it probably would. Like if we're talking about real life, if that ever like got out, some sort of
subpoena,
Watergate scandal like that, happened, so. But yeah, what I was going with was the scene in American Assassin where, he obviously greenlights bringing in Rapp, but he needs to go down and actually see for himself what's going on. And you mentioned the scene where he's talking to Hurley and he gives him that look, right? But he wants to come down and he wants to see, he wants Lewis's opinion. He wants to actually see what's going on with the training and everything. And then we get that scene where Mitch finally meets him, and Mitch has no idea who the hell this guy is. He wants to get to know him, wants to make sure his mind, I think they mentioned that he wants to make sure that his mind is sound. Mm-hmm. He sees something in Mitch. Maybe he sees a little bit of himself in Mitch. I don't think he was ever that deadly as Mitch is, but he can see that Mitch can do this and can be a valid asset. So yeah, I think he says that he's like the deadliest person he's ever seen.
Yeah. And that's where they kind of connect on another level of Stansfield wanting to ensure Mitch, after his first kill, right? Sharif on the bench, how he's feeling. And when Rapp gives him some sort of quip about, you'll never know, you're just a suit, he goes, oh, don't think it's that easy being in my position. You might be the executioner, but I'm the judge and the jury. The blood's on my hands too. And he's trying to assure Rapp, I have your back wholeheartedly because I am also the reason they're all dead. You pulled the trigger, but don't feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders.
That's interesting you brought that up because that's mirrored with a scene later on with Irene in Rapp.
Yep, Irene tells Rapp
and it's right after Irene's first like real kill, where she like puts the poison in, and Rapp wants to sort of go check on her and make sure she's okay. And she says sort of the same thing, like, this is not my first. It might be my first like actual
direct
kill,
yeah.
But it's not my first kill.
Right.
How many papers have I signed? Allowing you to go out there and do that. The blood's on my hand as well. So that's a cool parody between the two of them. We get both Stansfield and Irene with Mitch.
Yep, absolutely. Since you mentioned American Assassin, I think we have to explore. How did Hurley get in a position to be given so much leverage by Stansfield? Because Doc Lewis, at some points, wonders if Stansfield had a soft spot for Hurley, and that's why he had so much power, and was that a mistake? And I'm going to say, I think one of Stansfield's, and I think he would say, One of his biggest professional mistakes was giving Hurley such a long leash to pick recruits. Because look how long that delayed finding someone like Rapp, how long it delayed an Irene coming into her own and playing a role. And it does come back to their relationship, though, right? Because let's look at Beirut again. Why does he trust Hurley so much? Because they were doing all these missions together. And there's this crazy story back in Beirut of where Hurley was when the bomb went off at the embassy. But Hurley was out with the prostitute, and that's why Hurley was safe from the bomb. And then Hurley goes off and starts killing random terrorists throughout the city. And Stansfield knows it's Hurley. Just guys getting picked off left and right and disappearing throughout the city and these bloodbaths. And Stansfield notices Hurley can't go down that path. And he actually threatens him and recalls him back from the field and says, I'm going to send you to Peshawar to equip the Mujahideen in part of the Afghan-Pakistan border conflict. And so Stansfield was threatening to sideline Hurley as early as Beirut. But then even by the time of American Assassin, he couldn't sideline Hurley. Hurley still had such a long leash, and Stansfield has this soft spot and wouldn't rein him in.
Yeah, I think not even you nailed it. Not even does he have a soft spot for allowing him to pick recruits, but just a soft spot for him in general.
Right.
And I guess we can dive into what the relationship was like between him and Hurley. Like, what would you describe that? For me, what I thought was much so this little brother, big brother, because they're not so far in age to be like father and son. Right. It's way more, when you have a little brother. Oh, you have a little brother, right? Or
older brother. I'm the little brother.
You're the little brother. So when I have a little sister, and I guess it's similar, but like you see them differently, and you see them failing. You're not the first person to say something. You sort of let it slide, and you only see the good sometimes with things, and yeah. So he just saw this little bro who had a lot of talent, someone he needed, and let him do things that he probably shouldn't have let him done.
Yeah.
And like there's times where like they're having arguments in front of him with Irene, and he's just like, I am your boss. I am the deputy director of the CIA. And then eventually he is the director of the CIA. Like, what I say goes, Yeah. This is not a democracy here. This is a dictatorship.
Yeah. I think the big brother, little brother is spot on. And that's why he's only given that icy stare twice, because you're much more likely to give that to somebody and try to like pull rank on them unless you have a familial bond. I feel like he would have been harsher on Hurley as a professional boss, if he didn't have such a close relationship with him. He almost felt like family. So I think that's spot on. And then he's also not as jovial as I was describing with this MI6 guy, Rolly Smith, and this priest, who are just buddies, like your college buddies. So Stansfield and Hurley don't have that relationship, that kind of romance kind of thing. It's much more familial.
They're not going out to the bar together to get, like, they might have a drink at the end of the night together, a discussion, but they're not going out and, ripping beers next to each other at the bar.
And based on that conversation in Killshot, Thomas, Rolly Smith, and the priest of Fleury, I could see them getting hammered together. This conversation in Killshot was just so damn funny. I could absolutely see them getting trashed together, where I can't see that with Hurley.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I could see like Stansfield having to go in and save Hurley's drunk ass,
which he did apparently. Which he did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'd love to see that scene. But here's a good line just when Stansfield is broing out with these guys, and a line that would also apply to the first time we learn about Stansfield and Hurley. Listen to this. They remained closest friends and confidants, but they were stoically and unapologetically from a generation in which men did not hug men.
I remember reading that.
That so describes Stansfield and all his buddies. Whether it's like your little brother, whether it's like your drinking buddies, like that line just captures these guys are from a different generation. They are not going to be Scott and Mitch's, and Joe Maslick's generation. Like, these are old time operators.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Because I had a grandfather who didn't really like hugs. And
Right.
he's probably he was a little bit younger than Stansfield, but yeah, just different generations.
But then you look at Chris Ann on the other side. Our buddy, who's in the Army, and he's just an absolute monster. I weigh
Big
275, and
Big
he can crush
hugger.
me. Big hugger. He'll hug you every time you see him, even if you just saw him 2 days ago. So
You gotta give the hug.
you too. You're a little feely touchy over there.
Yeah, I like a good hug.
Your hands on. Your hands on. The back slaps, the shoulder rubs, the two-handed handshakes.
I don't know if I like how you're describing me.
Those Gonzaga boys.
Yeah, probably. So there's a lot of butt slapping.
That's true. That you do. It's good for the golf course. Gets you,
Yes.
Gets you in the zone. Gets you hit those pars.
Well, we're talking about relationships, so let's just go into his relationship with Irene. How would you describe that? Obviously, mentor-mentee. He's friends with her father.
Uncle.
And it seems like her... Yeah, I was going to go over that.
It's that uncle, though, who's not just, your parents' brother. No, it's uncle of you're not related, but they are so close, they might as well be your immediate family. Everyone has those family friends that you call your cousins, even though you're not related to them. And I just think Stansfield is almost like a godfather, uncle to Irene. And especially after she lost her father.
Right, exactly.
I wouldn't go so far as to say stepfather. I don't think Thomas wanted to be there for Irene to replace her father, as a stepfather, but to really honor Irene's father as his best friend by raising Irene, by mentoring her professionally, by not just giving her guidance to succeed at work, but giving her guidance to become, the strong woman she is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like he wants his daughters to be. He's going to treat her like one of his daughters, but knowing full well he's not trying to replace her father.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And we already discussed how much she learned from him, just about the job. She's the smartest character in the Mitch Rapp universe by far, I would say. And the only reason she's gotten there, I think, is because she had Thomas in her life.
Yeah, I was gonna say that she's not the director of the CIA if she's not his protege.
Right.
And I guess, finally, let's just go right to it. What would you say his relationship to Rapp is?
I think it evolves. And this is a scene I wanted to bring up, and it leads in perfectly when they're at Stansfield's house after Rapp sneaks up on him. And then when Stansfield is dying and what he says to Rapp, and I think there's a scene in the Situation Room. So I would say in the beginning, he was this wise man, almost this sage, but in the shadows. Because American Assassin, Kill Shot, he took orders from Hurley, he took orders from Irene. He never directly, or didn't so often directly interact with Thomas, but he knew Thomas because he met him like we were just discussing. But he didn't really deal with him. So I don't think they had a super strong relationship that was able to flourish early in his career. But boy, I love the story arc when we get to the third option with Stansfield passing on and singing Rapp's praises about how much he meant to the country and how much he meant to him personally. And I think at one point Stansfield even tells the president that in the Oval Office.
Right.
I'm trying to see. I want to see if I have that quote from, I guess it would be the third option. Yep. In the Oval Office, in front of the president, Stansfield says, quote, "Mitchell, I'd like to start by saying that I've been in the business for more than 50 years, and I don't know if I've seen anyone as talented and courageous as yourself. Rapp looked at Stansfield and replied with a silent nod. The words from the dying legend were worth more than any medal his government could ever give him. That was powerful.
It says a lot. It says a lot. Yeah, their relationship is very interesting to me. Because in the beginning, it's, you know, the first interaction where Mitch, we get like the inner dialogue, and Mitch is like, who is this guy? And he's obviously someone important. But the whole time, Stansfield sort of has his back. But there's multiple times where Mitch has to prove to Stansfield that he's not the one that did it, like obviously in Killshot. And then also in The Third Option, he like sneaks up on him in his house. Like, I guess both those are instances where Rapp almost dies, and so he immediately thinks that the CIA put out a burn notice on him.
Right.
So the first person to suspect is the guy in charge.
Right.
But both times he sort of wavers on thinking that Irene wasn't, the person who did it, he never double thinks whether or not Stansfield is the one who did it. So it's not like it's his father, but it's also not an uncle. It's just a teacher. I would go with,
right.
A teacher and a really good boss. I wanted to ask you, I like how he calls him Mitchell. He always calls him Mitchell.
Yes.
Doesn't call him Mitch. Maybe once, but he definitely is the one who calls him Mitchell a lot. Irene ends up calling him Mitchell a lot later on, too.
Irene does it when she's angry, though.
Yes.
Stansfield does it as a term of endearment and respect, yeah.
The choice of not having Rapp at his funeral, what did you think about that? Like, why only Irene goes to his funeral?
I'm not sure I picked up on that. Was it Rapp's choice not to go?
Yeah, I guess I just read it as, I don't think Rapp is a funeral kind of guy, like the kind of guy that like goes to funerals. I don't even think he didn't even go to Anna's funeral. Right.
We see that with Anna, that he was very reserved and turned within and didn't want to go through the hoopla that the family had to go through. Mm-hmm.
And that was his wife. So
I think also though that was that decision could be out of respect for Thomas, because he deserved to be buried at Arlington. He deserved massive media coverage, and he just wanted to go back to South Dakota. And it was not a grand funeral, but just a private one. He wanted back where he was born. So I think that's just something Rapp would have known about him. And
right,
you can honor his legacy. Honor his legacy by doing your duty to the country, not by showing up to go through the motions,
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But I love this one wrapping up what Stansfield has meant to Kennedy. So I'll probably put this earlier. Kennedy could think of no one she admired more than Thomas Stansfield. The man had given close to 60 years of his life to the agency, his belief in democracy and his country. And she had given him her word. She would return to Washington. That came after this really brief line of Kennedy not sure at the end of the funeral if she was going to go back and take the job or try to move up the ranks. And so this funeral scene was so powerful because it kept Kennedy in the game. She wanted to honor his legacy. The same way I just said, Rapp, how do you honor this man? You show up, you do your job, you do your duty, and that also rubbed off on Irene. She went back and obviously rose through the ranks to become director and fill his shoes best she could. All right, that makes me think of a question. Does Irene supersede Thomas as a director? Do you think she grows into the role so much that she fills his shoes and more? Or does she remain, even to this point in the story, in the shadow of this giant? Or has she cemented her legacy as a giant herself?
I think they're equals.
Yeah.
I think they're equals. Especially by now. I think they're equals.
I think she proved it.
She proved it. She proved it when she killed that Senator Ross, right? She's not afraid to get dirty. She got taken.
Right.
I think they're equals.
It's kind of like that old saying of when the student can defeat the master. I feel like Vince didn't get or doesn't need to get into that logic of one has to be greater than the other. She almost, by just being a co-equal and being as great, is enough. You know, it doesn't have to be this old trope or this narrative, this myth of you have to defeat, you know, you have to do better than your father or your mentor or your teacher, and then you're only truly yourself. I feel like Irene was herself the whole time. She didn't need to supersede anybody to prove her worth. So yeah, I like that. I would say equals as what they've given to the directorship.
I also like how we've gotten to see his growth.
Mm-hmm.
And then by placing him in the very first novel as, or I guess in term limits, he's not yet the director. He's not the director yet, right?
No, I think he's still deputy director.
Deputy director. And then,
or maybe even another role, maybe even a lesser one.
And then, well, no, because he's the deputy director in Killshot, so I'm assuming it's the same position.
Got you. True. Yep.
Anyways, but by Vince putting him there and then showing the transition to Irene, we get to see her growth more. I think it's a nice literary technique. Instead of, like, because you could have started this novel with transfer of power with Irene being the director, you know, having her being this underling, you know, because she's not even a deputy director. She's just in charge of counterterrorism, right? So by seeing her rise and having this, you know, mentor-mentee relationship fleshed out in the pages, I think it makes for a better story.
Yeah.
So I was glad that we got Stansfield as a character.
Absolutely. I was thinking to wrap this up, what if we share some of our favorite Thomas Stansfield moments? Could be a scene, could be a quote, maybe some that we haven't mentioned. And since you just brought up transfer of power, I've got to bring up a scene that blew me away when I first read it, which is Stansfield's logic talking to Aziz.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Aziz had just taken the White House. He's all smug in the Situation Room. And all these hostage negotiators and the Attorney General Tutwiler are basically all just getting smacked down by Aziz. Like, we have no other option but to cave to his demands. He's got the hostages. We're playing the game he wants us to play. We're being manipulated. And Aziz goes on TV to try to play this sympathetic, I just want America to free the Middle East, stop being our oppressor, you know, stop fighting wars to conquer and take our oil and slaughter our people. And Aziz is trying to play victim. Well, Stansfield answers a phone call from him. And when Aziz is giving him the, I'll kill hostages, I want you to turn over Farah Harut, which is the guy Rapp captured in the opening scene of Transfer of Power in Bandar Abbas, Aziz's terrorist buddy. Well, Stansfield isn't going to play the same old game. And he humors Aziz and says, you know, you and I have a lot in common. I commend your speech this morning. It played well with the politicians. I tried to tell him you weren't serious, that you were just performing. You did a pretty good job convincing people in my government that you've turned over a new leaf and you'll keep your word. But I know it's a sham. If you kill another hostage, I'll take this tape, leak it to the media so everyone can see, you know, the true nasty that you are, and you're not the victim you tried to portray yourself in the media this morning. And he says, you know what? If you start killing hostages, guess what? We'll just retake the building. That means you will die. We'll just bomb the hell out of it. I don't care about the White House. He even says at one point, 50, 100 hostages dead? I don't care. The president's in a safe bunker. We could bomb the thing and the president will still be alive. We'll kill your ass. We'll knock down the White House. We'll get our president back. We'll rebuild it in 6 months. Guess what? No big deal. And Aziz is like, but you'll kill hostages. And Stansfield goes, I don't care about some measly hostages. I'll get my president back. I'll get everything I want, and I'll get you dead. So he's like, I don't care about this hostage negotiation. I'm going to order a strike. I'm just going to blow you up and get my president back. And that's when Aziz is like, oh shit, like, This is not what I was
Calls his
expecting an
bluff.
American to say. That gets Aziz to slip up. And actually, it's Kennedy who gets the read on Aziz. When Aziz says things are not always as they appear, and he gets angry and hangs up, Kennedy's like, I think he's talking about us saving the president. Like, Stansfield was really smart, but he was so confident he's going to save the president. And Irene got a hint in his voice of Aziz saying, don't be so sure that you're going to get the president alive.
Right.
Because
and
he
by
had the
doing
safecracker.
that, he's able to take them. Yeah, exactly.
And then
Deduce him
Kennedy
not-
finds
like,
out.
forcing him to divulge information. Yeah.
Right. And Kennedy on that read is able to go after her hunch that he took this Kuwaiti guy who was operating under Saddam Hussein, breaking vaults, cracking into safes. And now Kennedy's like, oh shit, does Aziz have that guy in the White House to crack the bunker and get the president out? All because Stansfield made him play his cards.
Exactly. Well, one of my... I have a couple here, humor me, but so two of the things I really liked, or my favorite moments, were this one quote from Term Limits where, I forget who says it, but it's Stansfield was an icon, a real-life spook. He had earned his spurs running around behind the Iron Curtain, risking his life. I don't know, like, I just think of, he is the spy master.
Mm-hmm.
He reminds me very much of, in like the Brad Thor novels, I haven't read those in a while, but you know, the guy who takes over Scott Harvath, like who mentors him, and like this spy master, like the ultimate spy master. And then there's this other quote where who says it? I think the Russian says it in American Assassin, and he says, "Don't let his grandfatherly image deceive you. This man is a street fighter with a big set of Russian balls." I thought that was awesome.
And then the other guy was like thinking in his mind, why does he have to have Russian balls? And then Ivanov is like, he's got Russian balls because he's more Russian than he is American. He thinks like us.
Exactly. And then just this, like, there's these little like things with him. He's, you know, ultimate spy master, right? Going back to Term Limits, this scene that you wrote down, it just dawned on me. But you think he's constantly listening to this conversation, you know, fully attentive, but actually he's pretending like he's reading the brief.
Yes.
But instead, he's looking at everybody in the room, and then he pinpoints that something's going on with Stu Garrett and Nance, and this is what like triggers him. Like, when you don't think he's watching you, he's actually watching you.
Oh, I love that scene.
There's so many good scenes, but like awesome man, seems to, you know, really shapes three of the characters that are really important in this whole entire series, in Mitch, Stan, and Irene. Yep. We wouldn't even have the series without Stansfield, right? We wouldn't have the Orion team without him. So, you know, great character. Yeah.
So I got to wrap up with my favorite line, which relates to his ability to read people and do it in this very covert way. Totally forgot that's how we peg Stu Garrett, is that he pretends to be reading the brief, but his eyes are scanning, and he sees Stu Garrett kind of flinch, look at Nance, and Nance be like, don't look at me, don't look at me. I forgot about that. And no one else picked up on it in the room. But that makes me think of my favorite quote about Stansfield. And when we were podcasting in Transfer of Power, I believe I said, this might be one of Vince Flynn's best written sections. And I think I stand by that. So I love this. Trying to gauge Stansfield was like trying to read the expression on the Sphinx. The longer you observed, the more you thought you saw. But in reality, you saw nothing. In the case of the Sphinx, it was because there was nothing. But in the case of Thomas Stansfield, there was a lot.
Says it all.
There is a whole lot behind Thomas Stansfield, and I enjoyed exploring it with you, Chris.
Yeah, this is fun. I like this.
Let's do some more character analysis And we might have a good one to do very soon, as The Last Man is coming up as our August book of the month, which means Survivor right after that.
Yeah, and I think Hurley's time in our life is coming to an end soon, so might have to be doing one of these on Stan Hurley.
Yeah, in just a couple of books here, we are losing and won't have two titans of the Mitch Rapp series in Stansfield and Hurley. Yeah, let's make the next one about Hurley. What do you say?
Sounds good to me. I thought about doing one with Anna, but I didn't like her as a character, so we'll skip that one.
I don't know if our audience really wants to hear that either. I don't know if I want to write a limerick about that either.
I thought a good one would be to do one on Louis Gould, because we get him in like a couple books.
Yeah, Louis Gould's gonna make an appearance again. That's true.
We got to do our villains episode too.
I was gonna say, would that work as a villains episode?
We have to do top 5 villains.
Yeah,
or like
we got to do
a villain draft.
Wait, what if we finish Vince Flynn with Last Man, and that's one of our bonus episodes when we finish the book, because we're done with Vince. So out of everything Vince wrote, we can do a villain recap.
Oh, that's a good thing. We can do a whole superlatives with just Vince, like, because then we're done with Vince novels. Yeah.
Because I think Kyle's villains are in a different category, if you will. Like, Vince created a bunch of really memorable villains. Kyle kind of blurs the edges with villains a little bit. Who's the villain? Can you actually feel sympathetic for the villain? I feel like Kyle's doing something very different with villains than what Vince did.
Right. No, very true. Very true.
So, cool.
All right. Well, next time we come to you, we will have an episode on something. Don't know what yet. I got to work on that, but it'll be something good. So we'll see.
Could be an author series, or we could try to rush ahead on part 1 of The Last Man. I'm not sure which we'll have ready.
But you'll find out when you get it in your feed. So there you go.
And The Last Man will come sometime in August, even if it's not next week.
Yes. Again, we have to thank our patrons, our special operator, Sherry F., who I saw had a nice fan interaction with the bus.
With the bus. Social medias.
Yes. And I got to thank our special agents, George, Matt, Don, who also had an interaction with the bus. Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark, who I think is I saw Mark's name there, was on the as an ambassador. So
yes, indeed.
Thank you to you guys.
Mark just finished Enemy at the Gates and is chomping at the bit to talk about it. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Please subscribe, rate, review. Find us at mitchrappod.com and at Twitter, Instagram at mitchrappod. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch. Thank you to Thomas Stansfield. The man, the myth, the legend. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crooks.